Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Compelling Conversations podcast. Today, I'm joined by my friend Bilal. Bilal, thanks so much for being here, man.
Thank you for hosting me, and I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. I wanted to begin by saying that I believe my most favorite halaqah that I've attended is the one that you gave at College Station. To this day, I remember that one because it was real profound, man. The things you said. One of the things I remember specifically is you talking about how there's people that go to heaven and they don't say that we made it here because of what we did, but we made it here because God allowed us to. Could you please share that message that you gave that day?
Yes, so one of the verses that truly impact me and keeps me grounded a lot of times is the verse in Surah Al-A'raf. And it's the verse is kind of spoken in this, the narrative of the believers, and they're saying, Alhamdulillah alladhi hadana lihada wa ma kunna linahtadiya lawla an hadana Allah. The believers are saying, all praise to Allah for guiding us to this, for we would not have been guided if Allah did not guide us. And it's very profound that believers, like, they made it to heaven, they've done it, and the first thing that they think of is praising Allah and thanking Allah. um and I guess the theme that you can extrapolate from this is the theme of thankfulness, but also it's the theme of humility, and knowing that no matter what you do in this life, uh it's all because of Allah's mercy. It's all because of Allah guiding you to this. And there is a hadith, like the Prophet ﷺ even said himself, that no one will make it to Jannah just because of their work. Like, it's because of Allah's mercy. And the Sahaba are sitting around him and they ask him, like, not even you, like, oh Prophet? And the Prophet ﷺ says, yes, not even me. And just to think that, um, I've made it, like, I'm good enough. That's when you start not being good enough. It's a theme of constant humility, and at the same time, it's a theme of constant strive to be a good Muslim and a good believer.
That hit so hard, man. Especially that line, like when you say I've made it, when you say I'm good enough, that's when you stop being good enough.
Exactly.
Wow. Could you expand on that? That's something fascinating.
Well, um, I mean, I personally find that it's like in the small scheme of things, very true. Like, those classes that you're like, oh man, this class is so easy. Like, it's an easy, I don't have to put in the effort. Let me put my effort somewhere else. Usually you don't end up getting the A because you don't put in the enough effort for it, right? Like, you're like, man, this is so easy. Or I'm really smart with this chemistry class. I don't need to put in too much effort. And you do the minimal efforts and you find yourself, oh man, I barely passed. Um, and I think it's kind of the same thing in life in general. Excuse me, in life in general, when you think that you're good, you're not. I recently had this conversation with some of my friends back home from Egypt, and they were all telling me how, like, they're all on growth mindset. Like, whether he graduated as an engineer and he can't find a job, or one of my friends was a graphic designer, and they're all constantly striving, like taking courses, doing this, doing that. And what truly hit me was they're all saying that, like, if I'm not constantly improving myself, everyone around me is constantly improving themselves, and that's putting me at a disadvantage if I stop improving myself. And again, it's in general, like, if I stop putting in my 100%, or if I stop thinking that I need to improve myself, then I'm at a disadvantage compared to everyone else. But also, again, in the theme of like going and making it to Jannah, it's because you also have to have that humility with Allah so that you can make it. Um, yeah, I hope that kind of makes sense.
I love that. Really, I do. The things that you said inspired several thoughts in me. The first one was uh, the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, supposedly. It's got interesting things in it, but the one thing that particularly struck out to me about it was how it discusses that when something is difficult, treat it, as if it's difficult. Kind of like what you were saying about the class, like, oh, it's easy. Well, you got it's kind of the book discusses how you shouldn't have that approach necessarily. You should be like, okay, this is going to be a challenge. So I have to kind of prepare for the challenge. And I'm guilty of doing that as well, like throwing things off as easy. And it's like you said, it kind of just flips on you. I
Yeah.
was speaking to a girl yesterday and she said something interesting. I asked her, do you get scared? And she said, scared of what? And I thought that was so funny. And then she flipped the question on me, like, do you get scared? And I said to her, I could be fearless, but the moment I declare that I'm fearless, I start to become afraid. And she said, well, that's just the qadr of Allah. Like, it doesn't matter what you declare, what you don't declare. It's like, whether you're fearless or you're afraid, it's just the qadr of Allah. And she connected this with emotions as well. Like, the way you feel about certain things is also the qadr of Allah. And I thought that was so fascinating because I'd never perceived it from that perspective. You're a leader and you do a pretty damn good job, I have to tell you. Where do emotions play a role in leadership?
I apologize. You're kind of cutting off.
Can you see me now?
I apologize. I
You're
can see
good.
you now. Yes.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to hear my question?
I did not hear your question. I apologize.
Oh, you're good. I was saying you're a pretty good leader. Where do emotions play a role in leadership?
I mean, all of it. Um, but it's the fact that you got to realize when to. Well, this is a very hard question. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of times, things that drive us are very emotional. Are things that we truly care about. And when you try to help the community or you try to do something for the sake of the community, you're doing it because you love the community. You're doing it because you want to impact the change. You want to see the change in people. So in a way, it's emotional, right? It's the care. But at the same time, that care sometimes and the passion sometimes kind of overflows. And when something bad happens or someone oversteps or someone does something wrong, it could turn into anger. It can turn into frustration. Um, it can turn into more than that. And it's the fact that you gotta learn to put those emotions on hold. Um, like I can't remember how many times like I felt angry about someone doing something that um, I told them not to do, or I got angry at something because it didn't go my way. But then realizing, well, if I unleash my anger or I unleash my emotions and just say how I feel it, I'm not gonna get what I desire, or I'm not gonna get the best outcome. Um, I remember one of the books that I think every uh, leader or every person that has subordinates need to read is How to Influence and Influence People. It's a very straightforward book, but like one of the main points that the writer emphasizes is do not unleash your anger. The moment that you start shouting at someone is the moment that ego comes in play. And even if you had a fair point, they're not listening to you anymore. They're not going to take it nicely. And if they implement it, they're going to implement it while hating it. Um, yeah, excuse me. So emotions are, I guess, a motivation, but at the same time, you have to learn to detach it and put it on the side and deal with people fairly, wisely, and um, not harshly.
Yes. I've noticed for myself when I get angry, I become blind. Like there's so much I don't see. one of the ways that I've tried to deal with it is if there was some beef between me and a person, I had heard that Abraham Lincoln, what he would do was he'd write them a letter, like the meanest letter he could, and he'd shove it in his drawer. He'd never send it to them. But then he'd be
Yeah.
like fine with them. And I've experimented with that and it's worked several times. Like just write the meanest letter, just never send it. And then the next day you meet the person and you're like totally fine. It's like it's interesting
I
how that works.
I agree with that. I mean, I guess you can do it now with text. It's just like write the meanest text, and then you're like, just delete that. But a lot of times when truly you get a message and it's kind of like something that bothers you, put your phone aside for a couple minutes. Like someone's telling me about like a 10-minute rule. Just put it aside for 10 minutes and then come back to it later. Um, Usually you'll end up being a little bit less angry or a little bit less harsh.
Yeah. How do you deal with sorrow and sad emotions as a leader?
What would you define that for me, please?
Yeah, like just feeling down, I guess. Like everybody's got their up days and then their down days. It's like, oh, like I'm kind of at school or I'm at work, but it's a gray day. It's not really sunshine.
Well, the hard thing is I'm human, right? And as much as I try to control that, it's very hard. Eventually, I'll have a day where something's not going my way. I have other things that are on my mind. I have things that are stressing me outside of MSA or whatever I'm doing, and I just have to learn to not let that get to other folks because that's one thing I learned the hard way is when I'm feeling down or when I'm feeling, you know, I guess not in the mood, it kind of trickles down to everyone else. Um, and that makes it even worse because now instead of just being worried about my homework or being worried about that assignment that I have to do, I'm now worried about the fact that people that I'm working with are not feeling in their greatest shape because I'm stressed or something is worrying me. Um, but I guess the sorrow and the grief. Wait, did you say grief or sadness? Because sorrow,
Yeah, like sorrow and sadness. Yeah, just yeah.
I guess sorrow is usually for me associated with grief, but
Mm.
sadness is, yeah, I guess the way I like to look at it is that happiness and sadness are like extreme emotions, and I'm just floating or I'm happy with not happy as yeah, my bad. Happiness and sadness are like extreme, but just I like to think about it. I'm just grateful, right? So I'm just going through the day. If something annoys me, I deal with it on a moment and then I keep going. But I try not to let the stressors, I guess, get to other people.
Yes. Something I admire about leadership, and I see this in you, is a person has to be willing to kind of to step up to the game. And sometimes like you could like you mess up, but you go with it and you keep going and you keep learning, you know? How
100%.
did you come to that
100%.
position of embracing that, of embracing responsibility instead of fearing it, say?
Man, your questions today are really hard. It's taking me a second to think about it.
No, it's okay. I always tell people, I'm always curious, but it's never like the limelight's on you to give the answer. It's just, like a conversation. Like, I'm just curious. What do you think about that? You know?
I think we all have a responsibility a way or another, right? And the fact that you choose to step up or you don't is kind of really not up to you. It's kind of the people who tell you you have to be there or kind of the qadr of Allah. Um, but in general, I think the main responsibility of anyone is just realizing that they have a lot of influence on people around them. And I think that's something that not a lot of people realize. Um, like when I look at a freshman and then I think, oh man, I was just as lost as that. freshman when I was their age, or I came in and I was like, whoa, like I'm sitting in a 500 plus people lecture and I don't know anyone here. You feel really out of place. And I didn't realize this until later, but then it's kind of the responsibility of those upperclassmen to come and guide them and take by their hand and take them under the wing and influence them to be, better than they were. Um, and I think that's a responsibility that a lot of people need to step up to rather than think it's kind of like a leader that will step up and take responsibility for everything in the whole community when the community is kind of more responsible to direct how they want their community to look like, if that makes sense. Right? It's never that someone will come in and do something that will drastically change a community, but rather the community individually choosing to step up.
Yes. What should those choices be guided by? What kind of intentions do you think?
What do you mean?
Like the choice of taking up that responsibility. What should like I guess motivate a person or influence a person to?
Well, this is something I personally struggle with all the time because it's kind of a double-edged sword and at the same time, kind of you got to learn how to handle yourself and your own emotions with it. Um, but in Islam in general, we're taught not to seek leadership. If it's given to us and you know you got to take it. But a lot of times, if you look around and you actually see no one that's stepping up, um, or you don't see someone that has, I guess, the right experience, sometimes you gotta take an initiative and hope that you'll be guided to the right thing. Also, it's very hard because you gotta learn to deal with your ego. You gotta learn to deal with thinking that you know you're something special when you're not. You're really not. Leaders, a lot of people look at them and they're like, wow, like that person really has something going for them when they're probably not. They're just as ordinary as everyone else. They probably have more flaws than everyone else. Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this thought. It's just it's a little hard question to do with. I'm not gonna lie, it's something I struggle with. We're taught not to seek leadership, but at the same time, sometimes you got to look around, and if you feel that there is a need for something to change, you got to do it.
One thing that I think about when it comes to embracing responsibility, it always sticks in my head that Salahuddin, when he was young, he was not at all interested in, you know, say sports or sword play or anything like that. He wasn't interested. He was just interested in reading his books and just his studies and just kind of like a to himself quiet life, from what I understand. But then we see that in his life, when the time came, it's not like he chose leadership. It's just the circumstances forced him to embrace that responsibility, and he became Salahuddin. And I think that's very interesting. Like you mentioned, it's not that we choose leadership, but it's as if the leadership chooses us. It's as if it's, you know, something of fate. So I do see what you're saying there.
And it's something of a test to um, it's something of a test to see like how you handle yourself, and it's something you'll be asked about in the day of judgment. Um, but also in general, like it's something to keep in mind that again we all have a responsibility towards someone, whether that's like a younger sibling or someone on campus. Like I genuinely think that every freshman on campus they have uh, our rights to be elevated by those upperclassmen, and our upperclassmen have a duty on them to elevate them and kind of do that. And as you said, it's kind of like fate. You're at University of Houston. There's freshmen, and you're not doing anything about them to kind of elevate them, to mentor them, to just guide them to a community that loves them. Um, and again, that's faith. That's um, that's leadership choosing you, just being on the University of Houston campus.
What does UHMSA mean to you?
It means a lot. It means a lot. It means guiding me through some like very hard times as a freshman. I remember a lot of great brothers literally taking me by hand, showing me the ropes, uh, you know, keeping me on the straight path. And it was very tempting to kind of like stray away or find the wrong way. Um, that kind of what it meant to me as a freshman. But then um, stepping up later and having an officer position, it means to me a lot. It's a community that should be welcoming to everyone. It's a place where people are elevated regardless of their religious level. We have a lot of people coming from different, backgrounds, religious levels, cultures, languages, and the fact that we can all be like truly. I like to use this analogy of fruit salad. Everyone comes with their own taste and their own kind of background, and then we're all able to get elevated to become better Muslims and to grow together as a community. Um, I think this is what UHMSA needs to be. It's a driver for change for Muslims internally and externally. Um, whether that means to kind of help every Muslim with their faith, or to help them have halal food options on campus, or to help them get a prayer space, to make sure that they're being well served, or even beyond that, making sure that we advocate for, proper social justice causes. Excuse me. To advocate for social justice causes means to me a lot. I think it, as much as it means to me, um, at the end of the day, it's the name is nothing much than the name and the logo is nothing much than just a name and a logo. What truly matters are the people that are there. What truly matters are, um, the community, the brothers and the sisters in the basement or in the library, just you know, interacting and having a good time and at the same time growing. I think that's really what it means to me at the core of it.
I find that friendship is kind of a frail thing. It's kind of like a bone. But what's really cool is when you're part of a community or a group like UHMSA, you feel like you're a part of the skeleton, like you're a part of the body. It's like together, and it becomes like a stronger thing.
Yes,
Yeah, that's cool. Well, what do you think
man.
is, yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just I keep thinking about this a lot. Like recently, I was in Egypt and I was just doing a lot of contrast. Like I was looking at Egypt and I was looking at like Houston. I was looking at like Cairo and I was looking at like you know generally how we live here. And just by nature, people in the Middle East a lot of times to live in really close proximity to each other. Uh, you know, buildings with 100, 200 people in a single building. Um, and here we're like very much further. And I don't think it's just a physical thing, but I think it's kind of also like metaphorical in the sense that like everyone here likes their space, everyone likes to be a bit further away. And it turns out to be that they get further away from the community, they end up being by themselves, they end up being further away from that sense of belonging to a group, which is something that people in Egypt don't, or like the Middle East, you know, they rarely like that. Like they always feel like they belong. They always feel like they have someone that kind of has their back. But here, a lot of times, like especially on college campuses, like there's 40 plus thousand people on the campus, and you walk around feeling like you're just a number. But then, as you're saying, like you have that skeleton, you have that backing to you. It's truly important, and having that from now is important because I think the culture needs to change, especially in Muslims. The idea that I'm just an individual and I'm just gonna live my life away from everyone, it's a very sad life. I think it's a very uh, lonely life. Of course, a community comes with the rights and duties and responsibilities towards others and expectations, which I guess some people don't want to deal with. but at the same time, it comes with a heightened sense of, belonging and a heightened sense of I'm gonna do something or I'm doing something. Uh, and and that's why I see a lot of times in the communities here. It's something very crucial. Uh, and it also reminds me of this. I don't remember the hadith of the Prophet exactly, but the hadith is that the shaitan is further away from the group. The shaitan is further away from two and three people. But when you're by yourself, the shaitan is very close to you. When you're by yourself, you're very tempted to do anything. You're very tempted to, or you're easily swayed to do whatever. If you're by yourself and you're all the time like consuming whatever comes your way from social media or from the internet, you're most likely going to be influenced by that. But having a group around you to anchor you and to keep reminding you of Allah, that's crucial. That's the backing that's necessary.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I was talking to someone the other day and I was telling them that when I come to the university and I tell people I'm from Cyprus, it's kind of like a badge of honor for me because I don't meet so many people from Cyprus. But then I realize when I'm driving back home, like, oh, like it's kind of alone out here. Like we're still pioneers, you know? The party's always in Katy or Clear Lake or Sugarland. It's Cyprus is kind of we're pioneers. So I feel that for sure. Like the being alone as opposed to being a part of a community, it wildly changes your perspective on things. It's insane. You really do feel that strength when you're with people. It's interesting. It's like I think it's something about like angels, right? When people are gathered together, it's kind of like angels coming among them or something like that. You kind of feel that spirit of, oh, this is cool.
Yes, yes. When people are gathered in remembrance of Allah, the angels write down their names and they take it up to the heaven. It's very beautiful. That fact that we're just sitting together remembering Allah, that our names are written down. SubhanAllah.
Yes, yes. Talking about your Egypt trip, what was the best part about it for you?
All of it. Uh, I mean, I can keep talking about this trip for like years and years. But I think the best part about it is the fact that I felt like I've known my country a little bit more. Like I was born there, I lived there barely for like 4 years, and then I moved to Saudi Arabia. I lived there most of my life, and then I moved here. So, when you're always like moving around, when you're always away from home, you just barely go there every summer or every other summer, and you visit, it feels like, okay, that's the place where there is family. And sure, there's some memories, but you don't know anything about your country other than that. But this time I got to go back and I had a lot of, visitations. I went to like all the tourist spots for sure, but also um, one of the most anchoring places was um, going to the graveyard. Um, and it's kind of interesting because I think about it like I went there to just make dua for my grandparents, and I was with my father's uncle. And after when we were walking back, he was like telling me about all the history, like this guy was a millionaire. This guy was, did this. This person, they actually came in as refugees, and then, they became like siblings with these people. And this person married this person. And, he kept talking about like people that, hundreds of years ago, like 100 plus years ago, and they died. And we just know where they buried. And those are my family. And I contrasted that in my head. I'm like, well, also going to like all those Egyptian temples, and I'm going to the pyramids, and I'm seeing technically my ancestors. But I found it very interesting that like I had a lot of people, I have a lineage here that lived their lives, had amazing, happy lives, and their lives are done, and it felt anchoring in a sense. I don't know if I can elaborate more or explain it more, but it felt very anchoring to realize that, you know, I might not feel like this is home all the time, but it is home in a way. A lot of times here in America, or especially for immigrants, it feels like this place is not truly home. It uh, feels like this place is not truly home. It feels like I'm just here as a foreigner. You might have the passport, you might have the citizenship, but having lineage and having like history here makes a big difference.
I really like how you mentioned that, man. What I was thinking about was something Marcus Aurelius talks about. He says everything's already happened and everything's always going to continue happening. People are born, people die. People graduate, they get married, they work, they go to parties. Everything's already happened and it's going to keep happening. The culture might change, the time might change, the aesthetics might change, but it's all already happened. It's going to keep happening. And as you said that about, seeing all these relatives of yours in their graves, it's like, wow, they walked the earth once upon a time and now they don't. And they had their own stories, their own experiences, and now they're just gone. And yeah, like I always think about old people and how if they're alive and how like their contemporaries are all gone. What must that be like, living among all these people, but nobody from your time or very few people from your time? It kind of just shows like the things we worry about, the things we freak out about. It's just like, God, it's so temporary. It just keeps happening and happening. You're never too early, you're never too late. You're always on time where you are. Yeah, that's a cool
Exactly.
thing, man.
I mean, you're never too early or you're never too late. That's just Egyptian culture, man. Like we'll meet when we meet, you know? Like I'm 30, 40 minutes, hour late. That's fine, man. Like there's no big time. Uh
Yes, I love
I
that. Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I don't know why this is something that I guess Arabs and Desis need to work a little on, but like we're never on time, man. And that's something I'm personally guilty of.
Yeah. No, it's funny, man. I'm curious. Yeah, actually, this is one thing I wanted to mention that connects to this. Left Behind. Like when I think of Left Behind, it's when people say that, I don't fully understand what that means because of this thing that you're never too early and you're never too late. Just like, oh, well, you're on time. That's just something I wanted to mention. But I'm curious, do you have any closing thoughts? Anything you felt like you wanted to say, but you didn't get a chance to say, or something on your mind that you wanted to express?
Yeah, it's just I mean, it's been 2 weeks since I came back from Egypt, so it's just like very fresh in my mind. I've been thinking about it a lot, doing a lot of reflections, and um, like one of the thoughts you're saying is like everything will keep happening, everything will keep going and flowing, and like truly walking through the streets of Egypt, you see that, like 100% you see that. When people say like the mix of the past and present, like Egypt is truly where the past and the present meets. And like you're walking down a street and then you see like an old building, a building that's like 100 plus years, maybe 1,000 years old. And right next to the building, there's like someone's home that's like they built 30 years ago. Or sometimes you're walking down the road and you see like a water well. Some like rich person built this like 200 years ago. So people are walking down the street can drink water for the sake of Allah. And then right next to it is some new building that's selling like Gucci or Nike. Fake, of course, but like, it's true. It's mind blowing. Or like one of the most crazy experiences was in Luxor. There's this temple, like the Luxor temple. And before they knew there was a temple there, someone came and they built a masjid on top of it, right? It's still there. They built a masjid. And then later excavations happened or whatnot. And then they found like, oh, there's a temple right there. Like, and to this day, like you go to the temple, like the Egyptian temple, and you look up and there's a masjid right there. You're walking down there and you're hearing adhan, you're hearing like prayer as you're going through it, which also by itself is very freaky because you're like the like the call to the one God is being called, and like I'm in the middle of like all this, you know, crazy many gods being worshipped temple. But seeing that past and present meetings, seeing that like people still are able to adapt while holding on to the fact that they have history and they have lineage, I think it makes them stronger rather than make them weaker. I think a lot of times the American culture is to kind of not really care about the history or not really care about what people before you've done and just kind of try to figure out your way on your own and do something new, reinvent the wheel and change everything when there's no need for that. And probably the people before us did it, they did it great. Just learn from them and improve on it, uh, rather than again reinventing the wheel.
Yes, that's so cool, man. I love how you mentioned that, man. Whether you're Moses or Cleopatra or Scandet, it's like, wow, like all that history is just kind of there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you share again how you say Cleopatra in Arabic?
The way Egyptians say Cleopatra is Kilobatra. It's funny.
Yeah, it is. And I was
But I
curious.
guess maybe
Yeah, yeah.
it was said. I guess that's how maybe it was said, and then English changed it. Uh,
Yeah.
a lot of things are said completely in a weird way in Arabic.
Yeah. Have you been to Iskandaria, by the way?
Yeah, yeah. So in the trip, we went to like the village where I was born, and then we also went to Alexandria. We went to Sinai, and we went to Luxor and Aswan, and we went to Cairo.
Wow. When you stood at the waters of Alexandria, did you feel anything?
To be honest, uh, I don't know. I think because I've been there a lot of times, perhaps I was a little desensitized to Alexandria. But this recent trip, I got to go to like the citadel that Salahuddin built in Alexandria,
Wow.
and that felt special. It's directly on the sea, and it's supposedly something that stood there until uh, you know the English colonizers came and kind of got a little destroyed. But seeing that by the sea was very interesting. Um, the sea was very soothing. Like um, seeing all like there's a lot like you go by the shore and then it's just a lot of old folks fishing and like playing some music from the 80s or the 90s and they're just kind of relaxing by themselves. Uh, it's a vibe. It's a
Yeah.
vibe.
Yeah, I know. I'd love to go there one day, inshallah. It just seems like a very fascinating place, Egypt. All that culture. So cool.
And you should.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I love those
I've
mummy
never.
movies.
That's not really like a real. You're not gonna get that experience. I'm not gonna lie. Like it's not gonna be like a Indiana Jones type beat, but you'll have fun regardless. The nature is beautiful, the history is amazing, and the people are very nice. You'll enjoy, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah. Well, thanks again, Bilal, for being here. I truly appreciate the perspectives you brought, man. I'm thinking about a lot of the things you said, and this will benefit who it needs to benefit. So thanks again for
So
being here, my friend.
thank you so much, man. Hope you have a great one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thanks. Until next time, inshallah. Welcome, salam. Yeah.